Assalamu alaikum.
Salam, dear ones.
We begin in the name of God, the infinitely compassionate and infinitely merciful. And we bring our attention to our breath. This breath through which we experience the presence of spirit. The reality that we are alive and conscious. And we receive each breath with gratitude. And through this awakening of presence in ourselves, we open a window to the infinite. We open a window to the divine reality. No longer cut off, no longer confined to the prison of our own thoughts and reactions. We open to a wider space. And we take a step back from our thoughts, from our emotional reactions. Take a step back into the source of consciousness itself. Thoughts come and go. We don't engage with them. We let them pass like clouds in the sky. As for our feelings, we simply acknowledge our state in this moment, not resisting, not fighting anything, just being here. We practice presence, which is this enhanced state of self-awareness. We practice it in all states, in expansion and contraction, in joy and sorrow. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we practice, that we awaken this state, which is our truly human state. And through this state of presence, we may have a sense of the divine reality itself. For there is a continuum between this individual consciousness and the source of consciousness. So we return to the breath again and again, to that state of silence and stillness. And now for a while, we'll leave you in that silence and stillness. We'll leave you with your own breath, which is the divine breath in you. And to help sustain this presence, this remembrance, we suggest the divine name of Who, the pronoun of divine presence. So we're inhaling Yah, O, and exhaling Who, that presence, which is the source of consciousness, the source of being, the very source of existence, cycling in our breath, Yahu. And now we'll join our voices in the Invocation of Who 11 times. Bismillah. Now in silence on the out breath. Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. Welcome back. This month our theme is the interpretation of a sacred text is true if it stirs you to hope, activity, and awe. The interpretation of a sacred text is true if it stirs you to hope, activity, and awe. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. It's such an important theme that I want to come back to it and remind us of these essentials. Hope, because if spirituality or religion or spiritual tradition stirs anything negative in us, let it go. Understand that it's here to give hope, to heal what needs to be healed, to harmonize what needs to be harmonized, not to produce fear or shame. Activity, because we're human beings in the world, we're in this physical existence, and even with our spiritual lives, we need to practice. There are things we can do, there are activities that are important to be part of our lives, because if we're not engaged in these sacred activities, practices, worship, prayer, fasting, communion with others, then we're just swept away in the current of unconscious life, the incoherence of the world as it is today. And finally, awe, because if we're not awed by the divine, then we really are not opening up to what is truly, truly divine. If we don't have at least some sense that we're face to face with something immense and beautiful and even overwhelming, then we should practice some more. Then we should silence our minds. Then we should humble ourselves. So hope, activity, and awe. And as we said last week, that this comes from Book 5 of Rumi's Mathnawi. In Book 5 of the 6 books, Book 5 is a very high state. The teachings in the Mathnawi do follow a progression. And I would say what's characteristic of Book 5 is the experience of divine intimacy, of closeness to God. So this continues, these lines from the Mathnawi continues. Ask the meaning of the Quran from the Quran alone, and from that one who has set fire to his or her idle fancy and has extinguished it, and has become a sacrifice to the Quran, bowing low in humbleness. And here, understand, we're not talking about bowing to a theology, an institution, a dogma. We're talking about opening our hearts to divine communication, to a message that has come from the infinite intelligence and come to us human beings to help us, to guide us. So, ask the meaning of the Quran from the Quran alone, or from that one who has set fire to his or her idle fancy, random thoughts, associations, inner dialogues, and has extinguished all of this and become a sacrifice to that revelation, so that literally you tremble in awe and humbleness until the Quran, the message, the revelation, and we can say this too for other revelations, we can say this for the Psalms of David, We can say this for the Tao. We can say this of all heavenly revelations that have come to this earth, so that that revelation, that Quran, has become the essence of his spirit. That essential oil that has wholly devoted itself to the rose. You can smell either that oil or the rose as you please. So that's by way of introduction, a reminder of some things we spoke about last week. Bears repeating. Now, this week, I wanted to share with you something about the qualitative dimension of Sufism, in the realm of character, human character. You know, there's a beautiful saying of the Prophet Muhammad. He said, I came to perfect character. I came into this world with this message for the perfection, for the maturity of human character. So there's a beautiful book. It's called The Sufi Rules of Conduct by Abu Abdurrahman as-Sulami. Now this is quite old. This is 1,000 years old, more or less. Sulami, great Sufi, collector of biographies of great Sufis. And the Sufi Rules of Conduct is not so much a rule book as a collection of sayings to inspire us. So now we're referring back 1,000 years, which is just a moment away. It may seem like many years. 1,000 years is a lot of years, but no, it's just a moment from our lives right now. You'll understand when I share some of these sayings. Here's one that I love. Indeed, people go to the man or woman of knowledge, and what they learn from his adab, his courtesy, is more important to them than what they learn from his knowledge. Did you get that? Indeed, people go to the man of knowledge, and what they learn from his adab is more important to them than what they learn from his knowledge. Beautiful example of the embodiment of this theme. You can smell the essential oil or the rose as you wish. That inimitable quality that we've met with in certain human beings that has caused us to wish for transformation, to wish to be different than we are. And I'm not speaking to you as someone who has attained this beauty of character, but we strive for it. Every day words come out of my mouth that I would regret and re-speak if I could. We're all like that, aren't we? But we have a quest. The dervish is a human being that has a quest. The great Dhul Nun al-Misri, a very early Sufi, he was an alchemist, he was an esotericist, and he was from Egypt, one of the great early Sufis. He said, God adorned the religion of Islam with knowledge, adorned it with knowledge, elevated it through adab, and gave it nobility through taqwa, through self-vigilance. So this is comprehensive. We need knowledge, we need adab or courtesy, and we need taqwa, we need that moment by moment awareness that makes this courtesy possible and realizable. Sari Asakati, another great early Sufi, said, good adab is part of the mind's perfection. Manners. Adab can be translated as manners, although it's what these manners are more than formalities, more than a show. Good adab is part of the mind's perfection. So there's a relationship between this sense of conscious relationship, the humility, the modesty, the generosity, the consideration that makes up adab. It's part of the mind's perfection. And here is one more, and I think this is the package here, the final part of it, though I could go on and on. It was said, the heart of the Gnostic is capable of an adab above any other adab because his gnosis refines his heart. I know that's a bit of an awkward translation. I'm trying to find a more graceful way to say it. It's literally in the original text. It's the heart of the Gnostic is above any other adab. The heart of the Gnostic, the heart of the arif, if you want the Arabic word, the Sufi word, the heart of the Gnostic is above any other adab. It's the heart itself that is the adab. Because his or her gnosis, his or her marifat, refines his heart. So what we're talking about here is a gnosis, a realization, a divine knowing that is, you might say, the fertile soil out of which this adab grows. The beautiful flower of adab grows out of this fertile soil of marifat, of gnosis, of divine realization. It's said of the Prophet Muhammad that, he never, to the best of his ability, ever put anyone in an awkward situation or embarrassed another human being. That was the extent of his adab. So we're working on these things, aren't we? I hope we are. We're learning about them. We're learning about these possibilities. And we're putting them into practice in our relationships with the people that are close to us and with people that we encounter in the supermarket, wherever we go, wherever life brings us. So, Camille, what do you have for us today?
Thank you, dear. We have so many beautiful reminders within this tradition that has been passed on generation by generation. And something of a sense of the unfolding of all those generations is very present this morning. We watched a very impressive documentary recently. Maybe some of you have seen it. It's called A Life on the Planet by David Attenborough, and a witnessing statement to the beauties of creation and the beauty of diversity and our moment, now to witness ourselves and take care and inshallah turn things around to preserve those beauties. And this sense of witnessing to the power of the divine creative force, that one who is Al-Ghani Al-Muni, Kabir was just speaking about, being part of that activity and awe that, through those names of that one who is the rich one, the source of all wealth, Al-Ghani, and Al-Muni, the one that is continually enriching us, that we can participate in our activity in that flow and passing on the beauties and witnessing and preserving for the next generations, God willing. There are some beautiful moments in the collections of remembrances of Aflaki in the Rumi and His Friends book, where he speaks about Mevlana's father, and he includes the whole expanse of generations. And we remember that when one visits Mevlana's tomb in Konya, there with him are his father and his son and his beloved wife Kira Hatun and his daughter Malike, and generations and lovers of God clustered near, and we join in that community when we visit. And there's a moment that is recorded from remembrances of times when they were traveling, when Mevlana was young and the family was traveling through the Holy Land and visiting with illuminated ones along the way. And it was said that whenever their caravan would be approaching a town, people in the town would have a dream about the Prophet Muhammad and peace and blessings upon him, and this holy being approaching their town, and people would come out even as far as the day's journey to greet this caravan. And when they approached the city of Baghdad, the guards there, who may not have been quite so aware, asked, who are you? Where are you coming from? And Bahauddin, his father, leaned down and said, we're traveling from God to God, and there is no power and strength but with God. We've come from the placeless, and we're returning to the placeless. And he had a beautiful way of being, and lived to be quite elderly, 85. And his grandson, Sultan Valad, remembered his advice that, he would often spend the day visiting in the cemeteries. And he would say, during the day, visit the graves, and at night, look at the stars and contemplate God's wonders, as was the manner of our Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. So in a sense, that recognition of that placeless place from which we come, to which we are returning, and all the lives that have come before us, and God willing, those that will continue on, and remembering to share with our children, watching the stars. We get so absorbed, in the details of this life, and especially these days, there's much duress in just managing moments. But to remember to look up at the stars and that light that is shining even in the darkness. And in a moment, there's another moment that was recounted when Mevlana's father was teaching and he was speaking, and someone started to argue with him about theology and various details. And he spoke strongly to him and he said, what a difference there is between a pebble and a pearl. He said, what would you do if nothing remained of these heavy books of which you are so enamored? Where would you turn if there were no madrasa, no scholarly pulpit? What text would you use? What lessons would you give? Strive with every effort possible to commit to memory one page from the text of the heart. And remember that one till the end of time. This is the knowledge of love that will sustain you. And then he said, O Master of Jurisprudence, for the love of God, gain the knowledge of the heart. For what will remain of your laws and decrees when you die? And we're reminded too of that moment when beloved Shams of Tabriz was yearning for another heart with which to share this knowledge of truth within the heart, and was asking God for him to show him one of his beloveds with whom he could communicate. And in a moment, he was hearing the question, what would you give? And Shams said, I would give my head. That's all that I have. So we find in this world, we tend to accumulate things, and nothing really is ours except that spirit we share with the beloved who breathed into us in the beginning and to whom we are returning. And we're just caretaking along the way what comes within our view. And I was remembering a couple of little moments this morning too, when I was forming the collection of the Book of Women of Sufism. I was gathering various pieces, and at one moment I was listening to a recording of Irina Tweedy, choosing a few moments to share of her journey. And in one of her sobets, she was speaking to someone, and she said something like, just pay attention to what you're accumulating and don't hold on to more than you really need in that moment. If you have more chairs than you need and are using, she actually said, you're stealing from someone else. So just to remember to pass on. And this is a beautiful time when we are within our own realms to take stock and keep clearing, and then also within our hearts, to keep opening that space for the nourishment to keep flowing, because those fountains of God are continually pouring, and whatever comes to us of the beauties, to share those, as Mevlana said in another moment, when the flowers blossom and the fruit arrives, share it with your friends. There is a beautiful passage from the Quran to remember that she guides to himself, herself, all who turn to him, her, those who have faith and whose hearts find satisfaction in the remembrance of God. Truly, in the remembrance of God, hearts find tranquility. From Surah 13:28. And we witness, this beauty, this remembrance in every aspect of life, within each other, within the beauties of nature, the book of nature, also part of the revelation from which we read. And again, as it's said in the Quran, Surah 3:200, and keep your connection and remain conscious of God, that you might attain felicity. So may we keep renewing our connection deep within the heart with that infinite source of all sustenance. Subhanallah, Ya Rabbil Alameen.
Ameen. Ameen. Thank you. This week there was a beautiful interview with Camille that was posted by the publisher of her book, Rumi and His Friends. This book here, Rumi and His Friends, published by Fons Vitae. And an interview was done, and it turned out it's very beautiful. We will post that on the Threshold Facebook page and on my Kabir Helminski's Facebook page, and also in the upcoming newsletter, so that you can see it. It's really worth seeing. There's a short version of maybe 8 minutes, and then there's a longer version of half an hour where she talks about this book. And this book has been a little bit hard to get, but it's just now available as a Kindle book. So if you search for Rumi and His Friends on Amazon, you can now get the Kindle version wherever you are in the world. And if you're in the United States, when you see this interview that's being posted, the information for ordering her book is also there. So we will spread that information around, but we're very happy that as of yesterday, the book is available around the world easily, instantly, as a Kindle book.
Ya Allah.
So it is time for the Zikr. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim. Waladdallin. Amen. As long as we're in this world, none of us is free of faults, mistakes, and sins. May we be forgiven, and may we be forgiving. Bismillah. Astaghfirullah. 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 Astaghfirullah, 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 astaghfirullah. Everything in existence is the manifestation of a single source of life and being. And we say these words, La ilaha illallah, to remind us of the oneness of being, and to remind us not to make idols of our egos, whims, and desires. Bismillah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La God answers all calls made in sincerity and truth. Bismillah, Ya Allah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alam nashrah laka sadrak wa wadana anka wizrak alladhi anqadha dhahrak Karak Aina Malos Riosra Ina Malos Riosra Aisa Farakta Fansal Mahila Rabika Faram Sakalahuli.
We give thanks for the light under which we gather, for our peer Hazrati Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi, for the generations of seekers and guides that have come before us, and for all those who have been our teachers.
Amen.
And we pray for the health and well-being of everyone in this gathering, for our families, friends, our children, our children's children, future generations, our communities, and our planet.
Amen.
And we mention and call to mind at this time anyone in need of prayer or healing. And may Almighty God make our intention and our awareness sound and bring us in readiness to the center of true beginning. And may the light of this circle be received wherever it's needed. By the breath of Mevlana, by the secret of Shamsi Tabriz, by the nobility of Imam Ali, and with the blessings of Muhammad Mustafa, mercy to the worlds. Let us say Who. A reminder, dear friends, starting next week, you'll need a password to easily get into this meditation. And the password is simply threshold, lowercase, all lowercase, threshold. This is necessitated by changes in the Zoom procedures. And you may have noticed that you've been admitted, or someone has had to admit you from a waiting room the last couple of sessions. And that's a bit tedious and takes a lot of effort of one person who could be joining us in the space of remembrance and not clicking to admit people in. So you might get admitted if you don't have the password, but you can't be sure. So remember the password, threshold, lowercase. It's also will be on the banner on Sufism.org for anybody who comes along and notices it there. All right, dear friends, we send our love.
Yes. So much love.
Remember the password.
Heart to heart.
Okay. Salam.
Assalamu alaikum.